is, everywhere you look, the story of a great flood.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the greatest mysteries of ancient religions that may, thanks to modern science, have an explanation.
The wind opens the sea!
God opens the sea with the blast of his nostrils.
Number 10. How were Solomon and Sheba so wealthy?
The wealth of King Solomon is legendary.
The Queen of Sheba and her contemporary King Solomon were famously some of the wealthiest people described in the Bible. In the Book of Kings, Sheba visits Solomon. Her caravan contains a wealth of gold, gems, and spices. He too is described as being rich in clothes, gold, horses, and silver. But where did all that wealth come from? The two were possibly the world's first mining moguls. In 2012, archaeologists found an ancient gold mine located in Sheba's territory dated to her era. It contained a stone slab carved with Sheba's sigil. A year later, another dig took place near one of the mountains of ancient copper mines all over Israel's Timnah Valley.
Today, copper is a common commodity. But in ancient times, it was one of the most sought-after metals on Earth.
They discovered artifacts connected to the period of King Solomon.
Production on this vast site was booming at the time of Solomon's reign, 3,000 years ago.
Number 9. Is the Shroud of Turin a hoax?
For centuries, the Shroud of Turin has become one of the most mysterious and controversial pieces of cloth on the face of the planet.
The Shroud of Turin, the alleged burial shroud of Jesus of Nazareth, first appeared in France in 1354. For 200 years, it bounced around Europe until permanently landing at Turin in 1578. In all those centuries, the shroud has been the center of debate and controversy over its authenticity.
Lying between the geometric patches from the fire, the image of the front and back of a man's body.
Every test invites fringe conspiracy theories, so there is no worldwide consensus. There is, however, a scientific consensus. The shroud is fake. In 1988, 3 separate groups of scientists took samples for carbon dating. Some results were published in the journal Nature the following year. The shroud is, at oldest, from the end of the 13th century. Conspiracy theorists argue the results, but the Catholic Church makes no comment about its provenance.
The most famous thing about the shroud now is that it is a medieval fake, and not the burial cloth of Christ as millions of people have believed.
Number 8. The ceiling of the Moga Caves.
25 kilometers southeast of Dunhuang, home to one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, the Moga Caves.
At the border of the Gobi Desert sit the Moga Caves. Some of them date as far back as the 4th century.
Known as the Caves of 1,000 Buddhas, they house one of the most valuable collections of Buddhist art in the world.
They were used for meditation by Buddhist monks of the era, many of whom painted the ceilings and walls.
These paintings are a first-hand visual record of the culture and ideas that traveled along the Silk Road.
One of the caves, number 465, has befuddled researchers for years. The cave ceiling is painted with a depiction of the 5 celestial Buddhas. What's odd is that at the foot of each Buddha is an unreadable Sanskrit inscription. Researchers have used updated 3D scanning technology to review the paintings. They ostensibly confirmed that the craftsmen hundreds of years ago made a mistake. The paper letters were pasted backwards, possibly by people who didn't actually read the language. Number 7. Did the sun really stand still? The Old Testament is chock full of seemingly unexplainable miracles. In the book of Joshua, for example, the king of Jerusalem is poised to attack Gibeon, an ally of the young nation of Israel. After God lays waste to Israel's enemies, the Bible says the sun and the moon, quote, stopped moving. How could this be true? According to several linguists, part of the issue is in the translation. They say that a correct translation would read that the sun and moon, quote, stopped shining. In 2017, physicists took that notion and ran with it, comparing the biblical source to some ancient Egyptian documents. They posit that on October 30th, 1207 BCE, a solar eclipse likely occurred in the area. Number 6. Did Sodom exist?
Of all the events the Bible details, one remains shocking, even today: the destruction of Sodom.
The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most famous in the Bible, with God destroying the cities for being filled with sin. But historical evidence for the actual existence of the original sin cities has been thin. But since 2005, a team of archaeologists has worked on a Jordanian site known as Tel el-Hammam. The size of Tel el-Hammam and its geography match up almost perfectly with the biblical description of Sodom.
Initial findings reveal a colossal site, spanning an area of approximately 150 acres.
Their discoveries come with a grain of salt. The team comes from an unaccredited Christian literalist institution. Still, people around the world continue to associate the site with Sodom. Like the biblical city, Tel el-Hammam was mysteriously wiped out at the end of the Middle Bronze Age.
The team discover layers of ash throughout, ranging from 0.5 meter to 2 meters thick. Evidence that Tel el-Hammam was destroyed.
Number 5. Why was the Quran written without diacritical marks?
Some of the oldest fragments of the Quran ever discovered, around 1400 years in age.
Languages like Arabic contain both letters and diacritical marks, notation symbols that help with pronunciation. Their absence or presence can change the meaning of a passage entirely. Western scholars of the Quran have generally believed that the Muslim holy book was not originally written with those marks. In 2008, a carving was discovered in Saudi Arabia that shed new light on the debate. It was a 1,300-year-old Arabic engraving on sandstone, one of the earliest examples of the language. It did include precursors to the diacritical marks that are normally absent from the Quran. This has led some researchers to conclude that the Quran did once have them. Muhammad's followers, they say, removed the marks to aid in their translation to different dialects.
It is the book that is at the center of the religion of Islam. From it is derived theology, spirituality, divine wisdom, lessons from history, and so much more.
Number 4. Is there a scientific explanation for the plagues? In 2010, a team of climatologists may have discovered a proximate cause for the 10 plagues that God unleashed on the Egyptians in the Bible. By studying stalagmites, they determined that there was a significant climate change-induced drought during the reign of Pharaoh Ramses II. The Nile would have shrunk significantly, slowing down and encouraging the growth of burgundy blood algae, turning the water to blood.
The water becomes devoid of oxygen, and all living things in it die.
The toxic algae would have caused a surge in the frog population, followed by one of insects.
The only things that do not die are frogs. Unlike fish, they can hop out. And as it turns out, biblical plague number 2 is a frog infestation.
The insects, in turn, would have spread disease in livestock and people. It coincided with a volcanic eruption of Thera in Santorini, whose ash cloud could have spread darkness, locusts, and hail over the land.
It would have been, I'm sure, to the people living there as if the world was coming to an end.
Number 3. Evidence for the Great Flood.
It really is, everywhere you look, the story of a great flood.
Robert Ballard is the Indiana Jones of undersea exploration. In 1985, his team discovered the wreck of the Titanic.
We were jumping up and down, we were patting one another on the back.
He also may have found evidence of the biblical Great Flood. Ballard learned of a theory bouncing around scientific circles that thousands of years ago, a massive flood formed what we know today as the Black Sea. According to the theory, the end of the Ice Age flooded the Mediterranean with glacial melt. Eventually, they say, the overfilled sea spilled onto the land of modern-day Istanbul and formed the Black Sea. Ballard explored the Black Sea and made a shocking discovery: an ancient shoreline. For a human being 7,500 years ago, such a flood would have felt like it encompassed the entire world. Number 2. Did the Red Sea part?
The wind opens the sea!
God opens the sea with the blast of his nostrils.
The mystery of Moses parting the Red Sea may have been solved by a software engineer. Carl Drews studied the problem and published the results in 2010. His work was both peer-reviewed and examined by his employer, the National Center for Atmospheric Research. Drews believes the event is explainable under the right circumstances. First, Red Sea may have actually been a mistranslation of Sea of Reeds. That would, according to archaeologists, place the parting at the Lake of Tanis, a shallow lagoon. A 60-mile-per-hour gust called a wind set-down would easily have been strong enough to push the water, leaving a walkable path.
Wind blows across a body of water, and part of the water level drops, and so it exposes dry area.
It's a phenomenon that has been observed in the region by modern scientists at the Nile Delta. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Where was Buddha born?
The Buddha, the Indian sage whose story inspired one of the world's great religions.
According to Buddhists, Buddha began life as Prince Siddhartha Gautama. It was only by eschewing a life of wealth and privilege that Siddhartha achieved enlightenment.
There is no knowledge won without sacrifice. In order to gain anything, you must first lose everything.
For 2,000 years, people have argued over the location of Siddhartha's birthplace. Some said India, while others claimed Nepal. In 1996, a multinational team of archaeologists may have discovered the answer. Under the Mayadevi temple in Lumbini, Nepal, they discovered a stone marking the birthplace of Buddha.
Right in front of you, in the middle of the temple, actually is an archaeological site.
While the stone dates back to some 400 years before Buddha's birth, the geography of the location precisely matches the descriptions of Buddha's birth. Today, the site is recognized as Buddha's birthplace by UNESCO. Do you have empirical proof explaining a religious mystery? Let us know in the comments below.
Mystery solved.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.